This is Singapore, an island country off the tip of Malaysia. Although it's a small nation with a modest workforce, Singapore's economy boasts an output of nearly $500 billion. This surpasses its larger neighbor to the north, Malaysia, which has a greater population, more land, and abundant natural resources. However, this wasn't always the case. Just 5 decades ago, Singapore had a different story to tell. In 1965, Malaysia did something extremely rare for nations. It willingly parted with a significant piece of its territory in just 23 months, handing over the 719 square kilometers island of Singapore due to political and economic differences, causing racial tensions and riots. The split was inevitable, with leaders from both sides unable to resolve their disputes. This dramatic end to their union surprised many, especially after Singapore had voted for the merger in a 1962 referendum. However, ongoing disagreements and political disputes led to the separation. When Singapore separated from Malaysia in 1965, it faced a number of challenges. The country had a population of around 1 million people, and a significant portion of them lived in poor conditions, with slums and a lack of proper housing. There were tensions among the diverse ethnic and racial groups in the population. Singapore also had limited industrial development, high unemployment, and economic difficulties to deal with at that time. Singapore also faced the reality of having zero access to natural resources, as the island lacked them entirely. Many international media outlets doubted that Singapore would be able to survive. Lee Kuan Yew faced an extraordinary challenge: how to build a prosperous nation from a population lacking a clear national identity and natural resources. During its early years of independence, Singapore faced trade challenges and concerns about the potential threats posed by its larger and more powerful neighbors to its existence. To make things even worse, when the British military left, it took away a big part of Singapore's economy, making the country's tough situation even harder. If you were to compare the resources of Singapore and Malaysia back in 1965, it's unlikely that any credible expert would have predicted Singapore to outpace Malaysia by such a significant margin as it has today. Malaysia was the world's largest producer of rubber. Malaysia was the world's largest producer of palm oil. Malaysia was the world's largest producer of tin. Malaysia is rich in agriculture and minerals. When the tin mines started closing down, we discovered petroleum in 1974. In the early days, Singapore faced significant housing challenges, with a large portion of its population living in slums without proper amenities. To address this issue, the government implemented a unique housing policy. It allowed them to buy land at low costs and construct affordable housing. However, the goal was not to create a culture of dependency on the state. Instead, residents were encouraged to buy these apartments at reduced rates. This was made possible through the Central Provident Fund, where a portion of income was saved for housing. Over time, this policy led to a significant portion of Singaporeans owning their homes, effectively reducing housing issues. Currently, around 80% of Singaporeans live in homes they own, which were originally constructed by the state. This housing strategy has also helped Singaporeans avoid the soaring property prices seen in other similar cities like Hong Kong. At the time when Singapore and Malaysia separated in 1965, 1 Singapore dollar, SGD, was equal in value to 1 Malaysian ringgit, MYR. Fast forward to 2023, and now the exchange rate is SGD1 equal to RM 3.45. And today, Singapore is the third richest nation on earth, behind Luxembourg and Ireland. In the 1970s, the economies of Malaysia and Singapore began to diverge significantly. Singapore's economy was undergoing rapid industrialization, shifting towards manufacturing and services. To further stimulate the economy, Singapore invested heavily in infrastructure projects and developed modern industrial zones. This attracted foreign businesses, particularly when instability in other Asian markets, like Hong Kong and Taiwan, made Singapore a more appealing destination. It did this by maintaining low taxes, offering tax exemptions to companies, and keeping wages competitive by discouraging unions. This pro-business environment, along with strategic economic policies, contributed to Singapore's economic growth. By the 1980s, Singapore had diversified its economy into sectors such as petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, and advanced manufacturing. It became a regional hub for processing raw materials from neighboring countries and exporting higher-value goods. Singapore's growing financial sector also played a pivotal role, becoming the fourth largest financial center globally. In contrast, Malaysia's economy continued to rely heavily on exports of commodities like rubber and tin. Malaysia's development policies at the time were influenced by considerations of ethnic and racial identity. This approach aimed to address socio-economic disparities among ethnic groups within the country but did not prioritize industrialization and FDI to the same extent as Singapore. A crucial policy of the Singaporean government is promoting racial harmony. This policy is aimed at preventing ethnic tensions and avoiding the emergence of a Chinese first mentality, which could lead to social unrest and division in the country. As a result of these differing economic strategies, Singapore experienced more robust economic growth, attracting multinational corporations and becoming a global financial hub. Malaysia, while still developing, faced challenges related to economic diversification and attracting foreign investments on the scale of Singapore. These economic differences in the 1970s played a role in shaping the distinct economic trajectories of both nations.